Thanks for everyone for sticking around. I was asked to fill in for Bruce for whatever reason he couldn't make it today, so I will give the presentation. Who am I and why am I standing here? Just very briefly, my name is Dr. Pierre Debs, and in 2015 I started a company called Medcan in Germany, and in 2016 we were the first ones to import flowers from Canada into Germany and start distributing into the pharmacies in Germany, and we did that with Canopy Growth at the time with Tweed. So since about September 2015, I was working and interacting with Tweed to get the licenses to open this import business in Germany. And then a year after we started working with them, we had the import, and then 3 months later, Canopy bought my company, Medcan, 100%. Since that time, it was changed to Spectrum Cannabis, and I'm the Geschäftsführer in Germany, and in the middle of the summer, I became the European Managing Director, and my responsibilities for building out the pharmaceutical side of the operations and the business in Germany, in the EU. So with that, I will give the presentation, which I'm basically going to, what was the term Vic used? Go off board, or this is not my presentation, but I know it pretty well, so I'm just going to walk you through it. So next. I don't have it here. So this is the forward-looking. By the way, I'm a biologist by training. I worked for 26 years in stem cell research, and I also studied the endocannabinoid system the last 5 years. So I know everything about the endocannabinoid system. I'm not a grower. I can't tell you that much about growing plants. I know about the medicinal effects of the plants, but I don't come from Canada. I've been living in Germany for 20 years, and I have a pretty good understanding of the European regulations, maybe better than the other competitors since I've been here for the last 20 years. Anyway, here's your forward-looking statement for the investors. I guess it's pretty standard. And again, all the numbers and the financials can all be downloaded from the Canopy Growth website and also the CEDAR website. So basically, a snapshot of the company in which I work for. Canopy Growth is a world-leading diversified cannabis company offering distinct brands and curated cannabis varieties in dried, oil, and capsule forms, like a lot of the other LPs. You see the share price you can see the share price performance since 2017, showing I guess a very interesting increase in share price, which goes towards speaking towards the efficiency with which Canopy is operating at the moment. You see the market cap at this time was 14.4 Canadian billion. Your standard financial indicators, which I'm not going to talk that much about. We're operating in 11 countries at the moment on 5 continents. We have 10 world-class production facilities in Canada, proven commercial scale operations, and they have, I guess by the end of the year, we'll have approximately 6 million square feet of licensed cultivation, both in-house, indoor, and in greenhouse cultivation. This is specifically in Canada right now. Built on strong brands, global medical cannabis leadership. We have about, I guess, 9 or 27 patents, 9 IPs already will be put into clinical trials in Canada, not only for sleep trials, but also CBD trials for veterinarian usage. In addition, they have with the legalization in October 17th, over 100 SKUs were registered by Health Canada. I guess very important for the Canadian market are the supply agreements, and Canopy does have deep channels into the recreational market with 10 supply agreements for over 70,000 kilos per year in all the different formats which it's sold in Canada, online, brick and mortar, and through the Canadian liquor distribution stores. Again, active IP program, and we will be using these IPs not only for making formulations, but also for doing clinical trials and development of products which will be transformed from the extraction of the commodity or raw material of the flower. As everybody else, cannabis, as we all know, is a disruptive force. Pick your industry and figure out which disruption you can affect by using cannabis or industrial hemp for that matter. Canopy Growth Corporation listed on the TSX around the same time that they had the first import into Germany in the summer, August 2016. And then earlier this year, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. I'm not going to give you the story that Bruce usually tells about this because it's his story, it's not my story. But nonetheless, we are trading rather successfully and exuberantly on these two exchanges. And then what everybody else is talking about in the cannabis industry. Remember, I'm in Germany, I'm in the EU, I'm in Germany, and I'm a purely pharmaceutical person. I deal with only the pharmaceutical aspects. We're not so lucky as they are in Canada at the moment. Nonetheless, Constellation Brands injected $5 billion into the bank account of Canopy. What does this mean? Some people have asked why. Is it a defensive move to protect their market share, which they're going to lose from alcohol? Maybe it was, but I guess Bruce and Constellation like to see it as more of an offensive move in that they can capitalize early on the developments and get in early on the developments that the R&D team is doing in Smith Falls, and also get a leg up on developing products which they can put onto the various markets as it's allowed. So the $5 billion not only takes care of product development and setting us up in the various continents where we operate, but it also allows us to deploy large amounts of capital very rapidly when a jurisdiction opens up. So I give you the example of the EU. When any country in the EU starts to send the signals that they might open up the medical regulations, either we're already there with feet on the ground, or we can then immediately deploy a large or sufficient capital without worrying about it to set up whatever it needs to be set up in that particular jurisdiction. And that paradigm pretty much follows throughout through all the operations that we'll be doing globally. As we all know, legalization is spreading globally. You have in Canada, I'm not going to go over this, everyone knows that Canada now it's recreationally and medically legal. In the States, you all know what the situation there is. Latin America, everyone wants to run down to Latin America. We're also there, but the world isn't as cheery as everyone likes to make you think it is around the world to grow cannabis. But clearly this is going to change every year. So in 3 or 4 years, this map will be rather different. Again, your standard projections for a global cannabis market. In Canada, medical alone is about 3 billion Canadian. In the Canadian regulated recreational, as you've heard over and over again, they're looking at 5 to 10 billion Canadian. And then you have the global medical, which seems to be pegged right now at 180 billion over time, obviously. But I can imagine if some blockbusters come out, it'll be far greater than that. Canopy is built on strong brands. Again, I'm a pharmacist, I'm a pharmaceutical person. I don't have the luxuries of playing in the recreational market. And as you've heard from all the professionals before me and people experienced doing marketing, it's all about brand awareness, marketing, and pulling in customers to your brand, to your lifestyle, whatever that is. It's all the things that the marketing and sales team do, and I guess we have a pretty good team. Canopy, Spectrum Cannabis is our purely global medical brand, and I'll talk a little bit about that afterwards. We have this laser's not working. So we have Tweed, which is basically the mothership of the production. Tweed, we have the brands Vert, Maitri, Vanderpop, Doja, which will service the adult use segment of the market in Canada. We have affiliated brands with DNA Genetics and Greenhouse that supply us interesting and unique genetics, which have been sourced from around the world. And then we're also doing a sort of contract marketing and production, for instance, for Leafs by Snoop, and then Organo Labs and affiliate brands. There's a whole bunch of other M&As that are coming down the line, especially in Europe. In a couple of weeks, we'll start rolling out press releases of things that we've done already. Like everybody has mentioned before, there's a lot of people that talk about what they're doing, what they're going to do, that they sign an LOI or that they sign an MOU, or they're going to wake up tomorrow and brush their teeth. Well, we'd rather put out the PR saying, I woke up this morning and I brushed my teeth, which seems to be getting a lot of traction in this market right now. Affiliated brands, DNA Genetics, Leafs, and also for the retail, very important for the Canadian retail investors, are the brick and mortar stores. You have the Tokyo Smoke and Haiku. You have the Tweed Main Street, in all those modalities in which they will be able to sell Canopy products, Canopy branded products, Tweed products, Leafs by Snoop, all throughout the Canadian market. And then preparing also for the second round of the recreational market in Canada, where they will release the new batch of products, oils, gel caps, edibles, whatever it is they're developing for the recreational market. Global medical cannabis leadership. In 2017, they produced and shipped Canopy 5, about a little bit more than 5 tons of dried flower, generating us 40 million in revenue, and have visited up to 40,000 HCPs throughout Canada, and then at the same time opened up and authorized or started the continuing medical education program, which was designed and based out of Canada, based on the Canopy's reach outs to all the doctors, 40,000 of them. We will then take this program, this continuing medical education program, bring it into the EU, contextualize it, and use it to reaching out to the doctors in Germany, Italy, France, all throughout the EU. In 2018, we see an increased total of 8.7 tons have been shipped, an increase of revenues of to 78 million for fiscal year 18, 54,000 professionals visited, and then 10% of the revenues of Canopy growth last year came from Germany. So it's everyone's talking about Germany being the key and the door to Europe. Maybe it is, but at least right now it's the only country in Europe that has any viable market for medical cannabis, anything that you can say you're generating revenues. We're in countries like the Czech Republic, but we're only moving there minimal amounts of product at the moment since the market hasn't fully opened up. But the reason why Germany is the key for all the Canadian LPs is because it's the only place right now which is generating any revenues. That might change when all sorts of there's a couple of black swans sitting out there which might change the landscape in Europe. These are all distinctly Canadian aspects of Spectrum Cannabis, specifically the gel caps, the animal and the human trials. These have all been started in Canada, and they will slowly make their way over to the EU. At the moment, we're in the process of registering oils and gel caps for various jurisdictions throughout the EU. Unfortunately, you can't put gel caps everywhere when you want them and how you want them, so there's a bit of regulatory figuring out what's going on. Some countries might allow it, some countries might not, but clearly Germany's not going to allow it just that easily where you can just put a gel cap on the market. It's a pharmaceutical product. When it looks like a pill, in all effects for Germany it is a pill, and then in this case it's got cannabis, so it's going to be regulated rather stringently like everything else at the moment involving cannabis. The Global Medical Leadership Program is developing safe, effective natural medicines from cannabis. In this case, we're working together with Beckley Canopy Therapeutics and Canopy Health Initiatives as a subsidiary of Canopy Growth. They're working on a very tight partnership with Beckley Canopy Therapeutics in the UK. Beckley Canopy Therapeutics is built on the work of Amanda Fielding, especially in the areas of psychedelic and psychedelia, so using LSD and mushrooms for medicinal uses as well as studying the cultural aspects. So they have a very well set up and well structured research program in the UK, in which case we are teaming up with them to run trials in the UK as well as other research and development of various formulations for new types of products for the medicinal market. 2018, we have filed 39 patent applications with the U.S. Patent Office. We've started 15 human clinical trials, including phase 2 sleep trials, and we started 4 animal health clinical trials, including companion animal anxiety. Canopy is really big on the animal usage because people like dogs, I guess. I'm not a big domestic pet fan, but I know people like animals in their house, and that could be a pretty big product if they're able to calm the animals down. And for people who are angewiesen to having domestic pets for whatever reason, they might enjoy the benefits of something like a CBD chew in dog food. Where are we right now? Obviously, Spectrum Cannabis and Tweed started in Canada. Obviously, the second stop for Tweed was then in Germany, and now we find ourselves all over this map. All over this map here. Since I'm in the EU and we're in Germany right now, at the moment, Spectrum is in Germany, in Denmark, in the Czech Republic, in Poland. We're in Italy. We're in Denmark building a facility, and then we're in other countries that are not legalized yet, but we're there waiting for it to happen. I'm glad all the LPs in Canada are getting their production costs down because they still have to catch up to us in Spain. I don't know where everybody else is doing it, but as a biologist, I look at sunlight and energy in micromoles of sunlight, and I haven't heard that, and it's going to be hard to beat that in some parts of southern Spain. So I'm glad that everyone's going down that line. In the end, I don't care what the price, as long as it goes down and down and down on the flower as a commodity so we can make products, meaning extracts and pills. And it's pretty much the standard, as far as I understand the business world, when you have a commodity, the price going down, it means you have more pressure to make products from the, in this case, the API that you're going to be pulling out of the flower. So that's why an R&D program is extremely important. Like all the others, we're in Lesotho, in Australia, in 3 different places in Australia. In Brazil, we were with Entourage Labs, in Chile, Colombia, and Jamaica. In the EU, we're in Denmark. Denmark, someone mentioned yesterday that Denmark was the key to the European market. It might be if you're an LP producer for cannabis, because it's very easy to get a license up there. But if you're a patient, it sucks. And if you have a cannabis company in Denmark, it's going to suck for a long time because you can't do any marketing, you can't talk to the doctors, you can't talk to anybody about it. But you can grow as much of it as you want there and export it, so figure that one out. The same for Malta. I never understood growing cannabis on a little island in the middle of the ocean, which is completely flat. Again, I'm just a biologist, I'm not a horticulturist, so maybe it makes sense to grow in the middle of nowhere, completely removed from supply. If you have HVACs that go down, if you have all these wonderful artificial intelligence that you're using to grow a plant and to monitor it, good luck in Malta if any of that goes down. I like to stay in Europe, on continental Europe. It's not always the easiest, it's maybe more difficult, but I'd rather be in continental Europe growing products in Spain or southern Italy, where it's on the continent and I have quick access to things if they break. I don't know if you've ever been to Malta. It's not that easy to get back and forth. And clearly Lesotho is not going to dislodge the Caribbean for tourism anytime soon. But they gave licenses so people can grow the cannabis there, and hopefully we can figure, the people who are going to grow it down, they can figure out what to do with it. The European Union, our current footprint. Obviously, we're in Germany. I'm not going to talk about the tender because it's been talked about ad nauseum right now. Nothing big about it. It's a public tender. It was canceled. Maybe we're in it. Maybe we're not. I'm not that. Growing cannabis in Germany is not the absolute top priority. If the government wants it and we're allowed to do it, we will do it. And maybe in the future, growing cannabis in Germany will be a valuable financial return. But for right now, we're happy for the EU. I'm happy getting my product from Spain because I know again, it's all about the sun. I'm not going to disagree with the guy speaking with me before, but we'll get it from Spain. In Poland, it's just an import market, as is the Czech. We are already moving products into Denmark, into the Czech Republic, and so we've registered in Poland. And again, in cultivation in Denmark, we are building our facility up in Denmark, which should be ready to spit out flowers by the middle towards the end of the summer. Portugal, UK, Greece, Luxembourg, all these countries are in the process right now of opening up a medical cannabis program, and we're there. Regulation, quality, safety, and standardization. This is what everybody talks about. I can tell you, coming from the scientific world, when I was met with other pharmaceutical companies, no one was ever talking about a GMP license or standardized, or when salespeople would come trying to sell me technology products for doing biomedical research, they never said, oh, our company is GMP certified, or we have GMP certified. We pretty much understand that in that world. So it's interesting that in the cannabis world, GMP, safety, and standard has really been the talked about thing. Patients in the rest of the world don't normally talk about the GMP processes of production of diclofenac and Voltaren. But we do that for cannabis because it sits in this interesting world of medicinal and recreational usage and industrial usage. So it sort of hits everything. You can't just throw cannabis in one little schachtel and say, this is medicine and it's nothing else. It's a lot of things. Canopy prides itself, and I pride myself as Spectrum Cannabis in Germany and the EU on playing by the rules, with the rules to ensure quality and safety for the products that we deliver to the patients. Standardization is pretty much like, everybody wants to have standardization, and there is standardization of flowers to a certain degree, but it's a different question. Do you really need standardized flowers every day, or do you want to have just go over that, use the flowers to make something which the doctors can dose and can repeatedly dose and give you good quality. Then you make an extract and a pill. But nonetheless, there will always be a need for flowers, and flowers will not go away, even if the majority of the usage of cannabis products, recreational or otherwise, in the U.S., in Canada, in Europe, even if it switches, as we see in those jurisdictions, people are using vape pens and transform product and extracts and licking lollipops. And people smoking joints or smoking flower is going down. It's going to be left for the hippies and for people who want to smoke something, combust something. But everything is going towards extracts and pills. In the recreational market in North America and in the pharmaceutical market, we expect that anyway. The government told us when they made the new laws in March 17 that we're going to allow flowers for now for the patients that need it, but we expect and we want extracts and pills. So that's what we're giving them. We're doing that with teams of PhDs in Canada as well, research, R&D programs, strategic partnerships throughout Canada with interesting technologies. All these things lead to Canopy being the global dominant player in the medical cannabis market and also soon in the recreational market. Education. So as I mentioned earlier, we visited in Canada, they visited 54,000 HCPs, and I don't imagine that's going to stop. And as I mentioned, we're going to take that system into the EU. We've already started bringing it to Germany, where we contextualize the education, the continuing medical education program for the doctors and healthcare providers. We contextualize that to the jurisdiction, put it in German or Italian or French, and then we go from there. Also in Canada, very important, Canopy has teamed up with MAD, with Ubers, to bring awareness to driving while under the influence of cannabis, and also working with the College of Physicians in Canada for the sleep studies, and also working with a variety of Canadian drug policy organizations to make sure that the rollout of recreational cannabis, like Mr. Neufeld before, who spoke previously, said that it's not just about releasing cannabis for everything. You need to have a metered release, and it's not a bad idea, especially with the gummy bears. In Germany, gummy bears are very popular. But I don't know if you've ever had a gummy bear with 100 milligrams of THC. 100 milligrams of THC is a lot of THC, and most people who smoke black market THC are smoking it from a joint. They're never getting 100 milligrams. Even if they say this weed is 20% THC, when they smoke it, they're only getting max 20 to 30% of the THC in the flower. So they're not getting nearly as much. But you pop 100 milligrams of fully decarboxylated THC in a gummy bear, and even a 6'6" guy is going to go on for a trip. And if that little kid gets a hold of it, he's going to have a bad trip. One thing, flowers are the safest format for phytocannabinoids. There's nothing safer than a dried flower stored. If a little kid gets a hold of a dried flower and sticks it in his mouth, they're going to either chew it, spit it out, but they're not going to get high. I don't know why there's a picture of first-time buyers. I guess Bruce never bought cannabis before. Supposedly, now that it's legal, he might buy it. But the Canadian recreational regulated market, as people have pointed out before, between 5 to 9 billion goes to the illegal market. We don't know how much money the first-time buyers will onboard after yesterday. I guess in 6 months we'll have some data on how many people bought recreational cannabis, how many of those were medical patients, how many are still medical patients, how many medical patients deregistered as being a medical patient because now they can get it recreationally. We don't know. The big experiment we'll know in 6 months when we see that Canada hasn't exploded or imploded, society still sort of functions, and people are generally happy. I was mentioning with a couple other people, politicians around the world are going to have a hard time defending a prohibitionist stance when they see that it functions in a country like Canada, which is 30 million people. It's not Uruguay, but it's not the United States, but it's 30 million people, and it's a country which federally regulated it. Clearly, the market for social lubricants around the world is large, and I don't imagine it will be any smaller or disadvantageous for the cannabis world. So obviously, Canopy is involved in R&D of making potable phytocannabinoids for a variety of type of libations, be it sport, regeneration, or just a Friday cocktail, or even drinkable medicines. There are medicines which are better absorbed through the GI tract, and there are some cases where people can't swallow a pill or what have you, and a drinkable medicine is clearly going to be a useful medical device. Deep channels into the Canadian recreational market. As I mentioned before, in Canada, we have now 10 supply agreements for approximately 70,000 kilos per year, which I guess works out to 36% of the supply agreement shared to date in Canada. On the side, you can see the quantities that they're going to deliver to each one of the distribution channels in each one of the provinces. Ontario, Alberta, Quebec City, and all those other funny Canadian states. British Columbia. So I guess Canopy is fairly well set up to supply through contracts and distribution channels in Canada. Engaging in the retail, again, as I mentioned before, we are set up in all the provinces based on the type of sales modality which is allowed in that province, either brick and mortar, online, or through the state government, state distribution channels. Technology. I think what a lot of European investors might not realize is a lot of the Canadian cannabis industry is driven by technology people and the tech startup crowd. There's a lot of those that I've seen in the Canadian market. So they are uniquely set up and experienced at driving these vertically integrated structures and distribution channels, as well as marketing and online. Educating retail. I'm not sure what this is about, but I guess what Canopy would like to do is not only educate doctors on how to use cannabis as a medicinal device, but clearly they want to act responsibly because it is an intoxicant and it is being reintroduced into society. And as anybody who manufactures anything that the population uses, they want to make sure that their product is used safely. And because it's cannabis, and because it's coming out of prohibition, there's probably a lot of people out there that want to try cannabis, don't really know about it. So Canopy is going through the efforts to make a consumer education program to learn about cannabis. There's still a lot of people out there, as we know in the European Union, the regulatory level, there's a lot of prohibitionist thought and people are refusing to understand some truths about cannabis, its usage and its effects. So we will go the extra mile to also educate the customer. So an educated customer is a good customer and a safe customer. October 17, 2018, recreation in Canada doesn't instill in me the feelings that it does for the Canadians who've been here for a long time, but I do see it as a historic event of global proportions. Nobody would have thought 5 years ago or 10 years ago that cannabis would be legalized again. The whole storyline about its effects on society, and it's a historical event that doesn't go past anybody here, and I don't need to say much more about it. I think it's an important event, and I think it will happen in the EU much sooner than we believe. But Canopy seems to be well set up to address the market, to address the demand. We clearly have the supply situation. I'm not sure if we have a supply shortage like Mr. Neufeld has suggested that all LPs might have a supply. I don't know about that. At the very least, we have good branding, excellent branding, and excellent product design and market placement. Canopy Growth acquired, as you know, Haiku and Tokyo Smoke Shores stores in Canada very recently, building out our brand recognition. One of the most favorite topics of the CEO of the company, and then everyone who's wondering why Constellation put money into a cannabis company, we have been working on a alcohol-free intoxicant libation, in this case built off THC, in which case not only the formulation and the ability to solubilize the THC and other phytocannabinoids into a drink, which people can drink on a Friday afternoon or drink when they come home after work, whenever, again offering the benefits: no alcohol, no hangover, no alcohol hangover at least, 0 calories, and supposedly a happy liver. I don't know how much THC will be in these bottles, but they are doing the market research, the customer research, the different types of branding. How fast, how much do you have to drink of this to achieve the effect of drinking one beer or 7 gin tonics or something in between? So all those studies on how much you would have to ingest, we're doing that, and the market analysis is all going on to that in Canada. Again, cannabis is clearly a potentially disruptive ingredient, as many people have told you that already, and have presented various products and paradigms and theories and ideas about what cannabis is, what it can and cannot do as a medicine, as a tool for recreational enjoyment. But clearly we have, with Canopy Health Innovations, which runs and sets up and structures our clinical studies as well as the R&D programs at Smith Falls and in Canada, they are driving the development of formulations, dosing and delivery of cannabis-based medicines for cannabis-based, what they call indications which can be potentially alleviated or treated with cannabis products. You see the approximate forecasted markets for various indications of sleep pain, anxiety, MS, psoriasis, that all add up to multiples of billions of dollars and euros in market. The global IP protection schematic is put up there to get across to the investors that we are registering IPs not only in North America, but wherever we might be acquiring them or developing them. The beauty of, one of the benefits of Canopy Health Initiatives is that, as I mentioned before, they run the clinical studies, they design the clinical studies, and they are the seat for all the R&D data that we generate. They are a separate subsidiary of Canopy, but Canopy has the first right of refusal to buy all the IP, which is generated from Canopy Health Innovations. So this is a big plus for Canopy Growth Corporation. And again, Canopy Growth prides itself on not only being transparent and having the safe, secure production of cannabis flowers of standardized quality for the German market and of general high quality. Our standard operating procedures, which are used to run all our facilities throughout Canada and then taken piecemeal for our facilities around the world, where they are also contextualized to meet the local regulations. So we work on that. The R&D department is working feverishly building out 80+ more patents that they will be able to file over the coming months and years. Clear, we are a large-scale cannabis producer of a commodity, which is the cannabis flower. We will be producing cannabis beverage products, cannabis medical treatments, technologies, with looking at technologies and markets across the geographical area and pulling out the interesting and relevant IP and technologies that we can and bringing them under the canopy. Some performance highlights for the quants in the audience. Are there any quants in the audience? Good. You see a steady increase in revenues over the quarters. You see a steady increase in the average sales price per gram. A lot of the price per gram, I'm imagining, is driven by the prices in Europe, or in Germany for that matter. We see a constant increase of patients over time, and by the end of, by the beginning of Q1 19, we're at 85,000 patients, which is not bad. And then we see quarterly increases in the amount of kilos and equivalents that Canopy has been selling. So in a nutshell, Canopy is, I guess, still the largest with market cap. We are in 11 countries in all continents. We are extremely well capitalized. We've been in the German market longer than anybody else. We have generated a good respect from our authorities in Germany, from the patients, from the healthcare providers. They all look to Spectrum Cannabis in Germany for guidance on how they can use medical cannabis, which sort of mirrors what happens with Canopy Growth in Canada. The markets and the doctors are all forced to reach, to interact with the LPs in Canada. In this case, Canopy has reached out to a large chunk of these doctors and developed a reputation amongst the patients and the caregivers in Canada, which we're trying to replicate in Germany and which we will replicate across the EU. I'm not as an interesting presenter for the investor relations as the CEO is, Bruce, but I'll put up our corporate management team sitting in Canada. You have Bruce, who couldn't make it, and Mark, the co-CEOs. We got Tim Saunders as a CFO, and Dr. Mark Ware, who's well known around the world as a physician with a significant experience in cannabinoid medicine as well as clinical studies. And you see the CVs of our upper management team where they've been before in international companies as well as in Canada. And then we have furthermore a legal medical cannabis SVP, our managing director for Canada, and then our chief commercial officer, also with their CVs of where they come. So Canopy has built a very interesting and diverse and experienced management team in the headquarters in Canada to drive all the production, not only of the raw materials, of the transformed products, but also to drive brand awareness, to build brands and products which will stand the test of time. And this is the goal of Canopy, to build products coming out of Prohibition, to make a transparent, clean, industrial look and feel and actual production of medical cannabis as well as now recreational cannabis products. Again, I'm the Managing Director of Europe. I'm located in Frankfurt. If you have any questions, you're always more than welcome to reach out to me. I can answer them, and thank you for listening.